We started before with each chief negotiator telling us if anybody's missing, if anybody has to leave early. So, Ron, you want to start?
Okay. Good afternoon, everybody. Nice to see you again. From the district standpoint, I believe we are, Dr. Desimore will be here ASAP, but Dr. Shaker will not be in attendance with us tonight. As far as I know, we have no time constraints that anybody's mentioned to me yet.
Okay. Kirk?
We are missing Tina Sterrett. She's not feeling well today, and Mr. Fisher is no longer with the district. He's teaching us.
Okay. With that, nobody has any time constraints on your team?
Not today.
Okay. All right. Since it has been a few months since we've met, I wanted to review, I'm going to try this. I wanted to review the...
What is it doing that?
I know. Too loud. All right, I wanted to review the commitments that we made when we first started negotiations, and that we... Okay. To limit sidebars. Okay. Issues. Not individuals assuming good intentions, begin on time, we can end on time, which we didn't really begin on time tonight, but respect the process, maintain confidentiality, with keep writing, silence cell phones, take breaks when needed, respect opinions and thoughts, and maintain transparency. The common interests we came up with were we're all here for the same kids, employee morale, reduction of compression, student achievement, safety, recruitment and retention, culture, equity, compliance, competitiveness, implementation, and manageability. Did anyone come up with anything over the summer that they needed to add to either one of those? All right. All right. Still out. With that, our agenda, we need to accept the minutes from our last meeting, which was in May. Does anybody have any corrections or deletions to those minutes? I don't see any hands, so may we accept the minutes as written, please, from May? Thank you very much. All right. Where are we going, folks, tonight? Kevin? Oh.
Sorry, the bread is delicious. So we're back after a summer, and I'm just gonna, I want this to be a statement. I don't want this to engage in a quagmire. I don't want anything. But prior to the end of the school year, the district did something that a pay scheme, just kind of did it unilaterally. And the reason I'm doing it is because I'm speaking on behalf of everybody. So we're not going to pass and have people kind of say things. To be honest with you, that idea was not popular with our membership and our non-members. They made their feelings known. So I think on our side, from speaking with everybody kind of in the pre-meeting, there's kind of a lack of trust and faith. And I say that because we talked about the idea that was eventually implemented. We pushed back on it. The district came back later with some questions answered, we pushed back a little bit. And then essentially radio silence happened. And then the morning of the board meeting, the pay scheme was added in the good of the order, which, you know, you won't do the contract for good of the order, but the pay scheme you will. And it was voted on, and by the time before the board meeting was over, a video from the superintendent had gone out to every employee talking about how great an idea it was. And so we have done what we needed to do first through the grievance process and now through an unfair labor practice. And as far as we are concerned, it is what it is, and we will allow the people that we both pay to arbitrate this decision about whether or not the district was able to do it. But just understand, it left a mark in a place where, you know, we have a decades-long history of not doing things like that. It left a mark. So, you know, we're moving forward. We have essentially compensation left. We're hopeful that we get that done in the next 2 or 3 sessions. You know, again, we agreed to kind of build a plan and talk about what our interests were and go together to the board to ask for kind of what we want to do together, instead of saying, there's $30 million, this is what we want to do, this is what you want to do, and we get involved in it infighting. So I'm hopeful that's still the plan. I mean, again, you know, we're going to let the other thing work itself out naturally. I will tell you, and I've told people privately, the $10 million or whatever that was spent on the pay scheme, that nobody batted an eye about, and nobody asked where the money was coming from, including the school board members, and I've addressed that with them as well, ain't coming off of my money. So I don't want to hear there was 30, and we did this pay thing, and now there's 20, because the longshoreman in me will come out. So that was your decision, that's your money, you're eating it. So as we move forward, expect our plan to look a lot like the same money we've gotten in the past, and perhaps a little more, because, you know, we can spend $10 million without worrying about it. So that's kind of where we're at. But just remember, the behavior of the district, and I'm saying the district, because the bargaining team did not do it, right? The district. Behavior of the district and the board left a mark. And so that's kind of what I'm going to say, and that's kind of speaking for everybody in a summation of what they shared with us and what we've heard from members. So that's it for me. So let's get busy.
Okay. When we left here in May, we did have 11 options, I believe. I think 2 of them we had agreed upon. Those were the ones to do with the technical colleges. And so that leaves us with 9 options. Okay. 10, Amy said. So does anybody have a new option tonight or need to revisit an option that we already have? Ron?
Well, if I could, I just wanted to just kind of, I thought it would be appropriate for us just to kind of reiterate, you know, some of the interest again. And so we have not changed, and I know that was a question about, you know, how we would approach bargaining this evening. The interests that the district presented from the district standpoint have not changed. And so, you know, our interest in making sure that, you know, we address student achievement and whatever we have to do to, you know, make sure that we have what we need in place for our students is still definitely one of our interests. We are definitely still interested in the recruitment and retainment of our staff here. And some of the options that we presented were geared towards that interest. And again, you know, in relation to raising the starting salary, the work that we did with the turnaround committee to address those needs, you know, the increases across the board for all of our employees are still an interest. And the time in front of students is still an interest. And so there's the time that we spent with students. So those have not changed. And so again, we didn't go to the board and ask for a bargaining authority. We went and presented and asked what the critical areas are and the interests are from the board perspective. And that's still where we're at. So I felt like, you know, that, I don't know if that answers Kevin's question or not, but we haven't changed any of the interests.
Kevin?
So I think for me, and, you know, everybody kind of, not over here, but everybody kind of spread out. So again, I think it's a priorities. And you could say interest and I could say priorities, right? Like, I think starting salary is a priority that needs to be addressed, but not at the expense of current employees. I think the bereavement and paternal and maternal leave is a priority, right? I think working to equalize the supplement among the special instructional group, if that takes 2 years to accomplish, because it might cost a lot of money, is a priority, right? I think raises that outpace the cost of living increases and put us competitive with the district around us, I think is a priority, right? So I think, you know, the technical colleges being moved onto the special centers list, I think is a priority. So I think a lot of the priorities we had remain the same, and you know, so again, the bereavement leave, I think, is a priority on both sides. I know it was a priority for Stalk in the district, so I'm assuming it's a priority for us in the district, right? You know, so again, as we work towards that, again, starting salary, yes, but at the expense of experience, people, no. And so I think we're gonna end up kind of talking about those priorities or interests, because it's essentially the same thing, right? My interests are, you know, raising the starting salary, doing bereavement leave, right? It's just another word to kind of explain the same thing. So I don't know, again, my vision was we would agree on priorities and build a package and go ask for it. And that package may be more expensive than it has been in the past, but those are the priorities we agreed that we thought as a group were important. So I think, again, for me, it's not necessarily several different options, but it's taking all of the options we've seen and maybe some new salary options we were able to work on and put them in a bundle, for lack of a better term, and go to the board and go, well, a priority was starting salary. This is how we're doing it. The bereavement leaves a priority. This is how we're doing it. You know, the equalizing of supplements was a priority. This is how we're doing it. And kind of laying that whole pattern out for people as one package, as opposed to individually kind of checking off boxes. So that's, and I mean, I would be more than happy to start with the bereavement leave. I think that's kind of an easy one. You know, I think that has broad support on all legs of the table, or kind of, you know, parts of the tables. So, I mean, I think that's one where we could just go revisit and say yes. But again, I think that if we build our priorities, we have to be somewhat cognizant of the impact of the monetary part of it. But I don't think we restrict ourselves to say we may not ask for something because it's $1 million more than we think we might be able to talk the board into, because at the end of the day, we're to sell the board on what we think the priorities are to make people happy and to keep and retain and recruit the best employees we can get. So that's kind of where I'm at with the whole idea of like building the package.
Anna?
So I just have a question about the timeline that is possible for getting board authority from the board. If that's something that we have not gone to the board yet and asked for that authority, if we were to theoretically, you know, if we came up with a plan, you know, whatever tonight, how soon would you be able to get with the board to have an answer for us on whether or not they're giving you the authority for that? Because I think our next session is Monday, if I'm not mistaken.
Correct.
And I guess I will kind of reiterate again, and maybe good for the order, because we've been away for so long, that, you know, the approach to bargaining at this point in time, and again, it's part of the reason I still refer to them as interest, because, you know, the training that we received was on interest-based bargaining. And so that was the concept that was presented to the board this time around, that was kind of different from the way we've done things in the past. And didn't feel like it was really part of the interest-based process to go to the board and say, you know, this is the amount of money you get to work with, and that's kind of the way you've done it. So what we did talk to the board about was, you know, what are the interests from the district perspective, from the surveys that we did from the principals, and what are the interests, you know, maybe from a district standpoint that we have here. We didn't really talk about the priorities to those, but we identified, you know, what some of those interests were, and then felt like we, from a district standpoint, we presented options that, met what we discussed with the board as interest. So I don't have an answer to that question as far as when we are ready to have a tentative agreement that we feel comfortable with, then we will take it to the board, as well as when you take it to your membership for ratification, and that's how the process will go. But they will give an authority based on whether or not they accept the terms that we agree upon as a tentative agreement.
So we've been away a while. I'm wondering if the district has any new options that they're looking to pick up, or if there's anything in any of the other options that they did put up that they were no longer interested in?
I think we're pretty comfortable. I mean, I did go through Article 10 and really take a look specifically at some language that I thought needed to be addressed, and I didn't know if we were, if we were kind of stuck in the mud tonight, that would be something that we could kind of take a look at. And so, one of the options that was presented was obviously presented as a package, because it was, expressed that would meet the interest that we felt like we discussed at the table. But I feel like at this point, we still have that option, and we still kind of stand by that option. We have some ideas about language in Article 10, but I felt like, and maybe the options that we're waiting to take a look at for comparison, I know that from the TALC side, you presented kind of an overall, this is what we'd like to see, whether it takes 3 years, 2 years, or whatever. I think what we're interested to see is, do you have an option that for this particular bargaining session, that you would like to propose so that we can have some conversations about?
So is that option 6 that you're talking about that you guys have put out there? I'm sorry, 5. I can't make this bigger.
Yes, that's right there.
Okay, but it also had the targeted school support stuff in there, which obviously was circumvented. So you would be removing that from your option?
No, we didn't necessarily, no, I think we have current contract language, and again, I think, I took a look at that again today. I think we have to address, or very easily could take a look at the current contract language to address it, to make sure it aligns with, the recommendations and the work that we've done together as, again, what we consider turnaround committee and those recommendations. We made those recommendations, and, we didn't get to the point where those were accepted, but those are still an option for us.
Do you feel that it's targeted school support now, right?
Yes.
That we should meet again though and talk about some of the things that have changed over since school grade came out?
As far as identifying the risk levels,
Well, like we have schools that came out of BSI and now gone into BSI, and one that went into BSI and those types of things.
so,
I mean, I just don't know if it's something we're interested in doing or we're just interested in leaving
well,
it.
so here, if I can, I'll just go ahead and maybe I can use this as kind of an example of what we've done, kind of to prepare for tonight's bargaining session. So if you look at 10.023, and that would be the language around differentiated pay, and it refers to, the two areas I think that we would probably have to address is the turnaround language, which is 10.023.1 maybe, and 10.032, or 10.02, I'm sorry, I keep saying 10.03, it's 10.023, all right? That's the turnaround and transition language, which I think needs to be changed. Obviously, we have in there, a whole paragraph, part of the second part of that paragraph. Here it is. Okay, thank you for calling that up. So the first part of that, in turnaround school supplement, which we would propose to change to targeted school support, because I think that term turnaround gets confusing because we no longer use that. And sometimes we refer to these now as BSI. But really what the law says in the statute 1012.22 is that any school that has a D or F is what we're really talking about there. So that language actually pertains. And we actually talked about that this year. So the 4 schools that were BSI schools last year, this language applies to them. It's still in the contract, it's still in the statute. Those 4 schools will still receive that $4,000 supplement that they are entitled to based on the law and what's in our current contract language. If you could go back to that, Amy, sorry. So the second part of that is really all about the district identified turnaround schools. And that's where I feel like that's the work that we did in the turnaround committee to really change that part of that language. So we've identified risk level 4 as being those schools that would have targeted school support, because based on the criteria, again, that criteria was the direct certification and the onboarding that occurs over 3 years for the ELA test scores at those transition levels for those schools. So like all of that, starting with the turnaround school supplement will, not that one, a supplement of $4,000 available for all instructional staff assigned to district schools from that point forward is really no longer the case. So what I would propose is that we remove that. And then we work on what does that language actually look like, because we want to craft some language that says the district, whatever committee we're calling it, has identified the criteria that we use for risk levels to determine what that targeted school support looks like. And then there's no need, obviously, for transition school supplement, because we decided as a committee that that would no longer be the case. Did that answer anything?
Alright, I think we're supposed to be going into options, not like contract language at this point.
Well, that's actually what it can be an option.
You want to have that an option now? You want to make it an option now?
I can, yeah, I mean, sure, all right, yes, I can make it an option. So option whatever is in 10.023. That we remove all language that it pertains to the district identified turnaround schools. As part of that option, I would propose that we change anywhere it says turnaround supplement or turnaround, we replace that with targeted school support. And as also part of that option, we remove 10.023A2, which is all of the transition language.
Anna?
So what I was going to originally say is, when Shay brought up looking at option 5, I think what if I was understanding her, there's some things in here, numbers in here that would no longer apply to the pay scheme that the district and the board approved. And then you started talking about all this option, and I just want to clarify, are you asking us to change the language so that way the contract agrees with the same plan you guys implemented that we don't agree with? Or am I mistaken? Okay, just checking.
I think that's outside of kind of the norms that we've established. If you assume that was never the case.
That's why I asked for clarification.
Well, you asked me if that's what I intended to do. I never said that.
Alright,
Just asking for clarification.
anybody else have any other options?
No, not an option.
Not an option? Evan?
So I guess this will be option 12, right?
Okay.
And so this, to me, is the beginning of the plan. So bereavement leave, as stated, option 12, bereavement leave and paternal and maternal leave as presented. Yes?
We have an option already written for 12, you want me to just copy it for this?
No, because I'm gonna stack a bunch of stuff.
Okay.
So whatever the next option is, option 12 is the bereavement and paternal leave. Option 12 is a plan, perhaps over 2 years, to equalize.
Hold on,
Okay?
every time we get in there.
Yeah, whatever the, yeah.
All right,
you-
30-minute
Yeah.
parental leave.
Moving the 2 technical colleges onto the,
Well, I don't read it, parental leave.
if this is an option, I'm stacking things in the option. So parental and bereavement leave, just like option 6 stacks 6 different things. So next line, right?
Bullets.
Yeah, bullets. Next bullet, you know, moving the FMTC and CCTC onto the $4,000 center school supplement list. Yeah. Next bullet, and actually like bereavement should be its own bullet, see what I'm saying? Okay, yeah, all right. So the next one is equalization of the special instructional supplements. And I mean, we can have a more in-depth discussion about how we pay for that. We've costed it out to do it in 1 year versus 2. But again, I think if we commit to doing it over 2 years and it's gonna happen over 2 years, like one of our options is move it to 5,000 the first year and then move it the next 3,100 the next year. No, because I think that's worthy of discussion, right? So just equalization, however we determine. Let's see what else we got that we wanted. Yeah, we want to adjust the longevity. And again, we have kind of some proposals on by how much and how much each one costs. So an upward tick in longevity for people. Then there were other things I talked about when I first started talking 20 minutes ago that I can't remember. But, I mean, this is what I'm talking about by the building. Oh, starting pay. Increase the starting pay. I mean, we have, again, my option was $15,000 over 3 years. I'm not sure that's affordable, but it was what it was, so over 3 years. But again, I'm not sure we want to put that. Let's put, again, I want somebody to be able to come back to option 12 and say, let's talk about increasing starting pay and what that's going to look like. So right now, this is not an option that I think we can vote on, but it's something we will stack into. You know, raises for current instructional staff. And I think, in my opinion, if we tackle each one of these, at the end of it, we will have a package to present to the board. Those are, again, the priorities, right? I know the district is interested in starting salary. That's one of our priorities that's up here. Now that's all left to talk about with that is how much we want to move. That's the discussion. But we both agree increasing starting pay is good. Raises for current people, we both agree that is good. Now all we have to do is go in and talk about what that looks like and the structure of that. So.
Go, one more.
Just wanted to have a different line.
So again, like, even though I said we're gonna do it all at once, but I think bereavement and parental leave has approval right now. I think increasing starting salary has approval right now, just don't know how much. So I honestly don't want to get involved in any language that talks about adjusting differentiated pay while we have an unfair labor practice against the district that deals with differentiated pay. Again, like I said, it leaves a mark. And I don't think it's bad faith, but it leaves a mark.
I'm just gonna say this for the record, with all due respect, I don't feel like that's really to take a position on that at this point is not part of the interest-based process. That, we learned that, we really don't wanna take positions. That's why, We don't have a position on, we agreed that the turnaround committee did work and made a recommendation, and we stick by that. That's what we intended to do from day one, and that's still, I thought, from the turnaround committee, that's what we want to do. So we haven't taken a position against that or for that, because that's not part of the interest-based process.
I have a question about the schools that are getting the money that the turnaround committee recommended. If they're already getting money through the district's pay scheme, is the money we agreed to at this table another $4,000 on top of whatever the district did?
I would say with the options that we have, it would be right now, unless we want to amend those options to address that, yes, then that would be the case. If you were just to say, if we were to put option 5 right now to a test and we agreed to it, then those risk levels for schools, every person in that school would receive an additional $5,000. And every person who teaches in those subject areas would receive the amount of money that we proposed in the option. And there's I'll just say there's a long-term interest in doing and acknowledging and recognizing and implementing all of the work that the turnaround committee did. We all walked away from that 100% in agreement with the turnaround committee. There was a consensus on that. Unfortunately, we didn't get that approved through the bargaining process.
All right, Hannah, I think had her hand up first today. Get the mic to Hannah. Okay.
So, in honor of transparency, just to make sure that I'm standing with our things, the turnaround committee only agreed upon identifying risk levels for these schools. The turnaround committee never agreed on any part of this that has anything to do with the pay of it, because I sat in those meetings, and what was even presented in this option here it looks like it's a recommendation from the turnaround committee, and that is not the case. We tried to have these conversations to where we could have agreed upon something in turnaround to then present to the bargaining team. So I just want to make sure that that's clear, that the turnaround committee did decide on the criteria to identify the risk levels of schools. We had nothing to do with consensus or agreeing on how that these schools would be supported, or any one little single penny would be attached to these schools.
So that Ron and then Jay.
I'd have to kind of go back through the minutes, but I don't believe we ever, the district presented the option that included an amount. But we've always said that the recommendation from the turnaround committee was to really solidify and establish the criteria that we would use, and we all agreed upon the risk level 4 schools and identified the risk level 3 schools. That was the work of the turnaround committee. If that was taken in any other way, then us just, again, memorializing what the turnaround committee did, and I'll say it again, and I think it's exactly what you said, Anna, was that we established a criteria used to identify what our most at-risk schools are. We happen to present an option because there's an interest, it's a mutual interest to recognize those schools and provide supplements. We presented an option that just happened to have a what we felt was a legitimate supplement for that. I never said that was the amount of money was a recommendation from the turnaround committee. That is absolutely the district's option that we put on the table to address the supplement. One of the things that was discussed in the turnaround committee and the frustration that was presented was that throughout the years, the work of the committee got together, identified which schools and what they thought would be, and then they would be given a budget which would then have to reduce that. So we always turn around with status quo. And so we listened, we collaborated, we talked about how do we formulate a really solid plan to address our most at-risk schools. And that was by identifying the criteria used. And then on a yearly basis, we would discuss whether or not, what those amounts would be. So if it was ever presented as this is a recommendation from the turnaround committee, I don't believe you can go through the minutes that that was ever stated.
Okay.
So just two quick things. One, the thing about transition schools, we did have a very long talk about it, but I kind of feel like that needs to be something that's maybe brought up at turnaround again and maybe not here at this table. But my question is in option 5. So I just need clarity, and maybe Rob can help with this. If there was a resolution passed and it's already done and there's money there, and then we were looking at option 5, that money is different. So would that then take place of what the resolution was? Or would it be an addition? Or I guess I just don't understand.
I'm gonna go ahead and restate again. The resolution and the incentives that were provided were completely separate from any bargain. That's why we haven't addressed it. We haven't changed anything that was presented to you during bargaining. What we presented is what we presented. We still have those interests. It's completely outside of any other of the work that the district has done from the end of last school year to the beginning of this school year.
So if we agree to this, they would have the resolution money and then they'd also have this money.
Correct.
Okay, that's where I didn't understand. Okay, thank you.
All right.
Thank you. That's what I thought.
Anything else? Go ahead, Kevin.
I've had a caucus request.
Okay.
You're gonna ask me how long.
I am.
15 minutes from the person who requested it. So we're gonna hold that person accountable for 15
Okay.
minutes. She'll set a time, so we'll be good.
All right. Yeah. Kerr, TALC call for the caucus, so would you please give your report?
Yeah, sure. So, past few meetings have been dominated by turnaround, or whatever the hell we're calling it these days. Excuse my language. Hey, at least I was the first one. I'm looking at the turnaround school committee meeting minutes. And when we last left in May 8th, the committee recommendation was that if we don't have a settlement by the end of the contract year, risk level 4s will receive the current turnaround supplement of $4,000. We said something similar at bargaining. Bargaining team not accepting the recommendation, next steps, risk level 4 advertised for the supplement pending ratification. And then there's what happened on June 3rd.
I'm sorry, but we didn't have an agreement, we were gonna use risk level 4?
That's what it says.
Okay, yep.
Next steps will be risk level 4 can be advertised for the supplement pending ratification. And then we talked about the contract language, sorry, I'm pulling all this up as I'm talking so I don't misspeak. How the contract language says, as you had up here, FRD schools prior year, they get 4,000, and then we list schools, but that list expires, or it expired on June 30th. So, with a lot of confusion here, and I guess an interest of TALC is to pay all and not some. We want to table turnaround discussion, see if we can get some headway on maybe longevity and salary increases, and reconvene turnaround, and have them come back with a clear, defined plan. Because it seems that we're not reading from the same sheet.
Okay, thank you. Your report, Ron?
Yeah, just a couple things. I think what we talked about again too is, this idea that we go to the board, we get a bargaining authority, and then we kind of come back and say, this is the amount of money we have to play with. Again, we tried to stay away from that. Now, part of the process was, we felt like, having Amy come in as the chief financial officer and really going through that presentation with the financial status of the district, so we know, kind of where we sit financially. Obviously, there's, some ideas about what we want to spend on an annual basis. I mean, we know that, we didn't expect to get a lot of money from the legislature as far as, additional dollars. There was, kind of from the legislature put forth that we had to spend a certain amount on the TSIA money, which, we made sure that all of our options that we put on the table did address those. So really what we're talking about here is, again, looking at the proposals and how that affects us not only now, but what does that do to our fund balance, given the idea that right now, as we speak, we don't have any additional revenue that's coming in, and we don't anticipate that. And so I think there's kind of like this idea that, we have established what we want to spend. I mean, obviously, when we put forth an option and knew what that would cost, that would be in line with what financially that we feel like is an option that will allow us to sustain this process for the years to come. And so that's one issue. So when we are, again, one of the other issues that we discussed is, I think we're getting into kind of an a la carte situation. So if we put bereavement on the table, we just discussed bereavement, part of the reason that we presented an option in option 5, which included bereavement and parental. Yes, we have an agreement, but that's all part of a cost. And so it's difficult for us to say, yeah, we're just gonna go ahead and approve bereavement because we both agree on it. So we would love to do that. We would love to say, yes, bereavement, we've done it already in another situation. We're all for it, we believe in it, we think it's gonna be beneficial to our employees. But without having any idea of what we're thinking about in an option of, what are you thinking about in a COLA increase? What are you thinking about for this year specifically? What is TALC thinking about as far as that increase in salary? What are you thinking about in COLA? We would really like to see what some of those options that you're thinking about, so then we can kind of put that in a framework of, let's have a discussion now about the total cost of this so that we can really address those, rather than doing it on an a la carte basis. So that was again our discussion. Did I miss anything?
Okay, thank you. Kevin?
So we have that, but I'm gonna say something that's not interest-based. Okay, I'm just gonna say that out loud. When you came up with a pay scheme and spent $10 million, the board wasn't worried about not having additional revenue, were they? When you create six-figure positions, including one lady who I happen to like, but is not required to live in Lee County, you weren't worried about no additional revenue. So the idea you're now worried about no additional revenue, for me personally, is ludicrous. You spent $10 million in half an hour. There's no discussion about not getting extra revenue for the state. I will freely admit, the state doesn't give us enough money. I freely admit that, absolutely. But Polk is going after a village, and I know that because I got an article. So again, the idea that we're worried now about revenue from the state when you did what you did over the summer is, again, we have all the proposals with all the costing out. We have that. But I mean, are you going to take the money from bereavement for administrators in Schedule N that are probably just going to get it because TALC and SPALC have it from their compensation package? I mean, again, the fact that you say there's no revenue and you're worried about revenue when you did what you did in May, in essentially the dark of night, like the Colts left Baltimore.
This group of this people in here, and I understand where you're going, Kevin. I don't think this helps the situation again. I understand what you're doing. You're critical and you don't agree with what happened. We are here to talk about moving forward, what options we can discuss. I'm just being open and honest about our conversation in Caucus. You don't have to agree with that conversation, but we have to report out what we discussed. So what we discussed was how we approached this bargaining and what made us get to the point where we could present an option. And that's what we discussed. We didn't, I understand you have to say what you think you need to say, but that has nothing to do with what we're trying to accomplish right here now.
It has absolutely to do with what we're doing here.
We came here to bargain in good faith. We kept the options that are on the table because that's what we came with to bargain for. Whatever that is the case, that's still what we came here to do today.
Okay, and Kerr, like I said, we have all of these things costed out and ready to go. But honestly, the last 4 meetings have been dominated by turnaround. I've been on this bargaining for 10 years, probably. Turnaround has been 20 minutes. This is what the committee has recommended, and this is what we're going to do. We have spent almost 12 hours exclusively on turnaround. So I want to move on to talk about money in everybody's pockets, and we have all of the numbers and all of that ready to go. And I'm not saying what I got to say, because people know me. I'll say it if there's nobody in the room, and I'll say it if there's a million people in the room.
Well, we're certainly ready to hear what those options are.
All right, Kerr, you ready?
Sure.
Okay.
So can I don't know if this is option 13, but maybe I can just shed light into the things in option 12.
Really good that way?
That's fine with me, and I can copy and paste into that so that you don't have to do a whole lot of writing. You'll just have to do some formatting for me.
Okay.
So, second bullet, FMTC Cape Coral Tech Special Center Supplement. According to the bargaining unit list, there are 32 employees at Fort Myers Technical College in the TALC bargaining unit, 20 in the TALC bargaining unit at Cape Tech, 52 people at $4,000 each is about $208,000 plus FICA Med, 21%. We can find that in the couch cushions. In terms of what's next, longevity, not even the gold standard, the platinum standard that we've been working towards over the past however many years has been one, and I think maybe this is our option 3 from before, is both sides have wanted to get that 30+ year to $10,000. And that'd be great. And so to do that, those amounts in the status quo would have to increase by 60%. Sorry, I said that was the sound that I'm spinning too much, I'm sorry.
I have no idea.
So when we're talking about longevity, I believe that's gonna cost around 3.6 in that ballpark million to go to the platinum plans. We've looked at some other plans, but that's really the one that we're hoping helps decompress some of the compression that we've seen in the salary schedule by increasing those amounts. And last, on the
I have no idea.
the starting pay, this is where I can, I think, talk and copy paste. No, I was just getting used
It's
to it.
this thing.
Oh, that's not
I
good.
think so.
Yes, for a paste with format. There we go. Thank you. We were looking at, our conversation was guided by how much do we increase the starting teacher salary? Do I need to postpone until this, or can you hear me?
Why?
You
Everything.
can hear me fine?
Okay.
So our conversation was dominated around how much does the base move? So in this option, we move the base by $2,000.
Yeah, I
That's
think it is.
almost a
I think it
4%
is the
increase.
thing.
That's why you see the really nasty decimal there, because that gets me exactly a
It's
$2,000
plugged in.
increase
I
in the
mean,
base.
it's plugged in.
And then we mimicked percentage increases that we negotiated successfully, both sides, I think 2 contracts ago, and kept with similar amounts. This came in the 30s, I think. Sorry, I have a lot of options here. I think before FICA Med and everything, this was around 31 million.
Yeah. Am I?
Just that.
So we were in the 40 ballpark, yeah. And so the thought behind this was when we started looking at, we analyzed 2 of our plans. Kevin had a plan to start with, if you remember, we called it the pass-through plan, where we passed through $1,500 over 3 years to raise the starting salary and gave percentage increases based on, how can I say this? If you give everybody $1,500, you have to lower the percentages so that your total spend remains the same. The percentages had to be lowered in such a way that it was actually to employees' detriment to do a $1,500 pass-through with lower percentages than the percentages that you see here. There were a couple of winners, but I think of folks in the district have between 0 and 51 years of credible teaching experience. I think there were 48
No.
years
No,
of
it looks
losers
normal on the screen.
and 4 years of winners. So that's just enough. A move in longevity would not only help recruit, because we are raising the starting salary, it would help retain and also help decompress so that folks that are working next door to each other with a gap of 5 years of experience will be making $200. I'm making up those numbers for
I don't know. Okay, I'll play with it.
I just need to clarify a question.
Okay, bye.
You put this under the starting pay bullet?
Yeah, 60 out of it, it's there, Gavin.
Yeah, it's all the same. Yeah, you can change the name.
Okay.
Change the name.
I will take that as a friendly.
So increase starting pay and
Right.
raising are approximately 31 million.
This is ridiculous.
Anything else, sir?
Kevin reminded me about the cost of bereavement. It says in one of our attachments that parental and bereavement are $1 million each. I know I shouldn't be saying that $1 million is small potatoes, but that's really small in the grand scheme.